WPFW, Washington.
Who are darker than blue. Don't let us hang around this town and let what others say come true. We're just good for nothing. They all figure a boy should grow, no shiftless jigger.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Darker Than Blue. Today is Friday, October 24th. It is 5:01 p.m. So that must mean I am Jackie Lukeman. Hey, y'all. Good to see or hear you all. I keep forgetting that I'm on the radio while I'm also streaming live via video on YouTube. So, hey, everybody, dear listeners on WPFW FM 89.3 FM in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. What's up to y'all who are listening online, WPFWFM.org. What's up in peace, everybody who is watching on YouTube, on Black Liberation Media, on YouTube, Lukeman Nation, on Facebook, and Black Liberation Media on Facebook. Hey, y'all, happy Friday. This is Darker Than Blue, the show where you just heard Brother Curtis Mayfield say is for the people who are darker than blue. That's me and you. We talk about politics on this show for us, about us, how they impact us. And man, it's been a week. Woo, it's a week, y'all. It's been so much going on this week. Here at the station, the WPFW, we are in pledge drive, and I think we are toward the wrapping up of the pledge drive this weekend. We've got a few more days to go. It's been a lot of fun to pledge with my partners, to pledge with Anthony Rogers Wright on Full Spectrum, with John Kane on Resistance Radio. It's been so much fun to do the show and to see the support from you all who are listening, who are watching, who catch us on the app afterward, where you can, yes, that's what I said. I said app. WPFW has an app now. You can go to WPFWFM.org and download that app. And through that app, you can listen to your favorite WPFW shows in real time live, or easily access the archives if you've missed one, right in the palm of your hand everywhere you go. But you can also pledge anytime to WPFW through that app. And y'all, as I said, we are still in pledge drive. My goal for this hour is $600. That is a small amount of money. We have certainly surpassed this number before. We can do it again. And listen, with everything that is going on, you just heard the news and some of the interesting things that are described. Yes, Trump is tearing down. Well, he has pretty much torn down the East Wing. I said West Wing earlier, but the East Wing of the White House. Honestly, never thought I would see that happen in my lifetime, but these are interesting times, absolutely interesting times. I'm not going to pretend that they're not, but yes, that is happening. He's saying he's doing it to build his big, beautiful gold ballroom, but there's always something else behind, underneath those words. That's not the whole story. But I'm not sure what the whole story is. I don't think any of us is really clear on what the whole story is. I just think it's interesting that Trump is destroying the White House. I mean, because people in this country love their symbols, right? Because look at how upset they get when we say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have monuments up to the traitors who fought a war, seceded from the Union and fought a war to keep and expand slavery. Maybe it's not a good idea for a quote unquote democracy to have those, monuments up to those people. But these folks love their monuments, and you would think that the White House is like the greatest monument for them, but not a peep, that not a whole lot of people saying things about not liking, people who are not people who are Trump supporters, right? Because the other people who are not Trump supporters are outraged. I am not, but because my ancestors built that house and pretty much everything else in this city and ain't get paid for it, ain't never been recompensed for it. So I mean, the bill is still due, but I'm just saying, I'm looking at the way people in this country are not responding to what I would have thought would have been a great sacrilege that he committed, but no, not so much. And then this is also going on, family, while the Trump administration and Pete Hegseth in particular are assassinating Venezuelan and Colombian civilians. They're murdering people because they claim that they're drug runners, but they have no evidence that they are. And even if they were, that is a criminal offense that involves the country that those people are from. So if they are running drugs, that is the responsibility of those countries to deal with those people. And if another country gets involved, then I think we're just supposed to alert the officials in the other countries, hey, this is kind of a problem. But see, if you don't have any evidence, right? If you don't have any proof that the people you are reporting who are allegedly drug runners actually are, well, of course, you're not going to notify the other country's officials about that. So this is also the Trump administration's escalation of the long, and I mean 60 years ever since the revolution in Venezuela, where they overthrew the US backed capitalist dictator, the actual dictator. President Maduro is not a dictator. He was democratically elected by the people of Venezuela. So I have to be clear that on this show we're anti-imperialists, and I don't subscribe to the definitions or the perspectives or the narratives that comes from the empire about another country. So President Maduro is the president, democratically duly elected president of Venezuela. He is not a dictator. Neither is Xi Jinping. And regardless of how you feel about him, he was elected by the Russian people too. Neither is Vladimir Putin. So in a country in which the Supreme Court is just about to roll back pretty much what's left of the Voting Rights Act to keep people who are supposed to be citizens from being able to vote for who they want to represent them. That's happening in this country. We will get that ruling from the Supreme Court in a matter of days, I think, and we all know what's coming because they've been working on it for a very long time. In a country where the right, the what's the word I'm looking for? The unrestricted access, the right to the unrestricted access to the ballot box. One man, one vote. That's supposed to be the foundation of democracy. We don't have that in this country. So we don't have a democracy. It's rich that officials or anybody else in this country calls another leader in another country a dictator. Oh, that's rich. But that has been the narrative about Venezuela and honestly any non-capitalist country. Any country that chose socialism and communism over capitalism, the United States and its Western allies call those leaders that the people in those countries chose to lead them. The United States always calls those leaders dictators, but we anti-imperialists know better. So listen, if you have not listened to Darker Than Blue before, if you're not familiar with what I say on this show, if you're not familiar with the politics of Darker Than Blue and the issues that I focus on, that I talk about, the truth rooted in history of this country and the things this country has done to our ancestors, our indigenous and family and their ancestors, other immigrant groups, and working class and poor people around the world, please take a listen. please sit back, take a listen, and enjoy. Well, I won't say enjoy, but take in what I have to say. And hear the way we talk about these issues from an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, pan-Africanist, international solidarity perspective. Because history is what it is. What happened in this country and what this country did to other people in other countries around the world, that just is what it is. The interesting thing, or I guess the unfortunate thing, is that in this country, we don't actually know that history. We have been told basically our entire lives, we've been educated about this country the way that we see conservatives, the Republicans, want to limit what we're told about this country today. But we have to understand that that's always been the way that we have been taught about the history of this country. And unless we understand how a thing came to be, we will not understand how to correct that thing, how to fix that thing, how to set it right when it goes off the rails. And if you don't know the history of this country, you don't really understand that right now, this country isn't going off the rails. These are the rails that this country was founded on. So when we talk about these issues here on Darker Than Blue, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you the unpleasant, uncomfortable, you probably don't want to hear it, not like the narratives that you hear on corporate media truth. We're not going to call other leaders dictators unless they actually are. And they're not dictators. Other leaders in other countries are not dictators just because they're socialist or communist, right? A dictator is a specific thing. Okay, so these are the kinds of topics we talk about here on Darker Than Blue, and how these international issues about foreign policy, militarism, imperialism, Zionism, war, imposed poverty and austerity, what these things mean to people like you and me, to the issues we face here in the United States, and specifically since we're here in Washington, D.C., because these issues are connected. So listen, as I said, excuse me, we are in pledge drive. This hour, I've got a $600 goal. We can absolutely do it because we've done it before. We are looking for new members because what is it? 1 to 3% of the listeners, 1 to 3% of you who are listening right now, just 1 to 3% of you are already contributors and supporters of WPFW. That means over 95% of the rest of you listening have not contributed. And I know, I understand why that is, because kind of generally people feel like, well, somebody else is going to take care of it. When there's a need, people feel like, oh, somebody else is going to take care of it. They're going to be all right. Well, independent media, you can't really operate on that kind of logic with independent media, because you see the way the corporate bosses, the tech bosses, the information czars are silencing voices of dissent, voices that do not agree with the corporate imperialist narrative, voices that challenge both political parties in the degradation of people domestically and internationally, right? This is the kind of information we share here on Darker Than Blue. And this is just what I do because it's important to me. It is who I am. I am an organizer. Information is absolutely power when we're talking about changing a society for the betterment of all people. That's the goal. That's why I come here at 5 o'clock every Friday and do this for free, share this information for free, unpack and unfold this history for free, because you don't know that you're not free. Not if you're watching CNN and MSNBC and then listening to corporate sponsored radio. They're never going to tell you that your rights are being curtailed, your rights are being denied, that this is not a democracy. And they're not going to tell you what this country's government is doing to other people who look like you and me around the world. But here on Darker Than Blue, I absolutely do. So if you appreciate the information, the history, the truth, the divergence of opinion, that's valuable too, because we can have a struggle over ideas. That's how we all learn and grow. Please pledge to keep WPFW going and on the air, and to keep Darker Than Blue on the air. Call 202-588-9739 or 1-800-222-9739. $600 goal. We can absolutely do it. New members, we need new members. $5, $10, $15, $20, $25, one time or a month. And now that's where we need the sustaining members. Did you know you can make a large pledge and break that large pledge amount up over 12 months so that you have a small amount automatically taken from your credit card, debit card, checking account every month to make sure that you keep WPFW and Darker Than Blue on the air, and you don't even have to think about it. You can break up a large donation into $10 a month, $15 a month, $25 a month, right? We need your help. WPFW cannot remain on the air without the support of the people who get the most value from the information we provide, from the jazz part of what we do to the justice part of what we do. If you appreciate WPFW and all of our content, if you appreciate Darker Than Blue, please pledge 588-9739. 1-800-222-9739. You can go to WPFWFM.org and pledge. You can go to WPFWFM.org, download the app, pledge through the app, or you can pledge via Cash App at $WPFWFM. We absolutely need your help. $600 goal. Let's get it. But listen, today, I really wanted to talk about one of those things that I just said, the connection between what goes on internationally that this government is involved in, and how it's connected to what we face here today, and specifically in the United States. So I am really glad to be joined by my comrade and fellow Black Alliance for Peace member, Johnny Miller. Jeremy Miller. I'm sorry, I just got your name completely wrong, comrade. Sorry, it's been a long week.
It's all right, Jackie. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to be here and have this conversation with you and your listeners.
Absolutely. Now, there is so much going on. And for 5 years, the Black Alliance for Peace has observed the month of action against Africom to shut down Africom on the continent of Africa. Jeremy, tell us what Africom is first, and why has BAP done this for 5 years, and why is it so important now?
Well, so beginning with what Africom is, Africom is an acronym, is short for U.S. Africa Command, and it is one of I believe, up to 11 now combatant commands in the United States military. It is the one that is focused on most of the African continent.
Yeah,
and
I can't hear him.
Is there an audio problem? Can you?
Let's say, Khalid, can you hear Jeremy?
Not at all.
Jeremy, can you say something?
Yeah, sure. Test one, mic test, mic test.
No, Khalid, you can't hear Jeremy?
Nope.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. Let's see.
Jackie, can you hear me?
Put him to the mic.
Yes, I can hear you. So if our engineer cannot hear, then that means our listeners cannot hear you. So let's see if we can figure this out on the web. Everybody can hear you on the web. Let's see. Jeremy, can you do a countdown? 10, 9, 8.
Sure, of course.
Can
10,
you
9,
send
8.
him the Zoom link, or can he come on the phone?
Let me send. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Did you want to
Yes.
keep counting?
So yeah, we're gonna make sure that Jeremy gets connected so you all can hear. But in order to do that, I am going to have to. Here we go, Jeremy. I'm gonna send you this.
Okay.
And then I need you to click on the link when you get it in your email. Okay.
Got it. So should I log out of here then? I guess.
Yes, log out of
Okay.
that, and then the link will be in your email right now.
Okay, here I go.
Okay,
See you
cool.
all in just a minute. Yep.
Yep, there's
All right.
all of this technical stuff that is being handled pretty much by, on my end, a one woman show, and on the studios in one engineer. So please bear with us, folks, as we get Jeremy onto the Zoom link, because 3 meetings today, 2 or 3 different projects I had to deal with that were all due today, and I even had to cancel an interview after this show because I just do not have the capacity to do that kind of thing. So this is what happens sometimes when people like me, who are absolutely very much committed to this work, because as I said, we don't get paid. We contributors here on WPFW, we public affairs programmers, even the music programmers, we don't get paid. We are volunteers. We come here, whether we come into the studio or whether we are broadcasting from a remote location like myself, we come here because the information we want to share is vitally important. We believe it is vitally important to what we are doing in regard to the work that we do when we're not here providing content, contributing to WPFW. This is what I do the other 13 hours I'm awake, if I'm awake 13 hours. I'm usually not sure because there's sometimes a nap in between there. But this is 1 hour out of my my week where I am literally just kind of telling you what else I'm doing or what I've been doing every other hour before here. This is not just what I do for WPFW, folks. This is what I do with my life. This is who I am. So the reason I'm willing to spend an hour every Friday to have these conversations for free is because this information is crucial for us to build a better society. Like WPFW says, one broadcast at a time. I really believe that's true. I know that we cannot build a better society, though, unless we have the information we need so that we don't make the mistakes that we made to get us to this point. So I think we've got Jeremy on this time. Let's see. Can we hear you, Jeremy?
Testing. You hear me?
All
Yep,
right.
I can hear him.
All right.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I apologize, y'all. So sorry about that. But look, I told you it's a one bunny show over here, as Abdi used to say. So Jeremy, you were explaining Africom to us right before we had to switch things up. So please continue.
Sure, yeah. So for those who, I'm not sure who caught what, but I was saying that Africom is one of 11 combatant commands for the U.S. military. It is an acronym. It stands for U.S. Africa Command, and it is the command that in recent years has had as its area of operations most of the African continent. And that most is a very critical word because the kind of key exception here is Egypt, which has always fallen under Central Command.
Really?
Yes, and that has to do with the greater politics of the so-called Middle East, the Levant, and whatnot, oil politics,
Mm.
etc. And so Egypt has always been, and the sort of special military slash arms relationship that the United Capitalist Personal States of America has with Egypt, and so Egypt is carved out, but for purposes, the rest of the African continent falls within Africom's area of responsibility. And this is a fairly new combatant command. Previously, much of the rest of Africa, most of Africom's area of responsibility fell under the European Command, right?
Mhm.
And interestingly, this is getting a bit into the weeds, but interestingly, some of the tactical components still do. So, for example, even if Africom has the overarching command for making strategic decisions and the like, if they are sending naval forces in, for example, or air forces in, quite often these are going to be coming from U.S. U.S. Air Force Europe and Africa, or U.S. Navy Europe and Africa, and
Mhm.
there's different geographies, right? So Stuttgart, Germany, would be the home base for Africom, but a lot of the actual tactical components are going to be actually more based in Vicenza, Italy. So
Hmm. Wow.
it's just a little distinction there. In any case, there was Africom was the product of a consolidation. It was actually a product of a bad idea from about 2004 that came out of the Heritage Foundation, those geniuses that brought us Project 2025 and a whole bunch of other lovely things. Um,
Hmm.
Heritage Foundation, around about 2004, came out with a policy document suggesting a consolidation of of an African command from the more scattershot prior approach. And it was there was economic incentives and political incentives, and economically there was a report that most people have forgotten about now since it's so long ago, but in 2001, right before 9/11, there was something euphemistically called the Cheney report. You have to forgive me,
Yep.
I don't remember the formal name,
Mhm.
but it effectively identified Africa as a source for a lot of new oil development in particular, but energy and development more generally. And that was like that was just like throwing red meat to the U.S. capitalists. And all of a sudden, there was like, well, how are we going to secure it? How are we going to get it? So that was one piece. And then the other piece, going a little bit further back, riffing off of things in the 90s, such as the infamous Black Hawk Down
Oh.
scenario in Somalia,
Mhm.
in which the U.S. thought they could get away with running a operation a certain way, and it wound up with a lot of U.S. soldiers dead, and there was pushback because, in particular, a lot of white folk in the United States were like, "Wait, what are we doing in Africa? We're losing good white soldiers in Africa? What?" And so there's a lot of political pushback
You
behind
mean
that.
to
So
tell me that movie isn't accurate, Jeremy?
I mean, I know there's a general healthy presumption that everything that comes out of Hollywood is 100% accurate, but in this particular case, um, no, it's not. And eh, so these factors lead into this Heritage Foundation proposal to create a dedicated combatant command, and this sits on the shelves. It actually was originally was not very popular with in the U.S. military. Was not very popular with Congress.
Mhm.
Um, and so it sits on the shelves, kind of collecting dust for a few years through the end of the towards the end of the the baby Bush, the George W. Bush
Mhm.
administration. And right before he left office, I believe it was in 2007, George W. Bush finally approved this new program, the creation of Africom. And this timeline is important because although it was approved under the George W. Bush administration, it didn't actually become operational until about a year later under the Barack Obama and the very beginning of the Barack
Right.
Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was around 2008 when U.S. Africom, excuse me, U.S. Africa Command, aka Africom, became operational. And well, there's more to be said, but I'll stop there. And henceforth, after this point in time, this is the primary military combatant command responsible for running U.S. imperial game on the African continent.
I am so glad you gave that context of what Africom is, particularly where it came from, because I say it all the time, and I just said it at the top of this show. We cannot correct course, fix the thing, change course, do anything better if we don't understand how a thing came to be, if we think a thing is going off the rails. But now that we understand where Africom came from, we should understand that Africom and what it's doing and what it's involved with on the continent and domestically here, not going off the rails at all. Absolutely. What they're doing is intentional. You gave so much information, Jeremy, but I wanna go back and hit a couple of points. First of all, the Cheney report. It is officially called the Report of the National Energy Policy Development Group, or something or other like that.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
please look it up. Look it up. And I'm so glad that you pointed out that the idea for Africom came from, guess who? The Heritage Foundation. Everybody's talking about Project 2025, Project 2025, as if these were new plans that the Heritage Foundation just cooked up like in 2020 or something. The Heritage Foundation and other conservative think tanks like it, they're not the only one. They have been cooking up the plans to turn America back into the white ethno state that it was intended to be when their ancestors founded it. So I have to check our pledge tally real quick because, oh, yes, I love to see this. Thank you all so much. We've gone from a $600 goal to now $410 because of you all. Thank you, friend in Durham, North Carolina. Thank you, friend in Hyattsville, Maryland. Thank you, Craig in Windsor Mill, Maryland. Craig is just by the phone today. I love it. Craig says, wants to thank all PFW, because see, nobody in the DMV calls it WPFW. You know how we do. Want to thank all at PFW for the valuable work you do. 410 to go, a little less than 30 minutes. We can absolutely do it. 202-588-9739, 800-222-9739, Cash App, $WPFWFM. On the web, WPFWFM.org. Pledge 410 to go. Jeremy. So now that we know that the Heritage Foundation, not any one particular president, because it started officially with Bush, was given to Barack Obama. He took the ball and literally took it and expanded Africom to, I forget the percentage of terrorism that increased on the continent. Yeah, it was like 1,300%, some crazy number like that. And the whole excuse that was given for the establishment of Africom from the presidents was to fight terrorism on the continent, right? Because the alleged radical Islamic jihadists were running amok on the continent. This was after September 11th. And now we find out this history. Oh, this entire thing wasn't about terrorism, had nothing to do with 9/11. It came out of the fevered white supremacist, racist minds of the Heritage Foundation, the capitalist, colonialist, settler colonialist minds of the Heritage Foundation. So this actually skips over like 3 different questions.
Well, I mean, let's touch on the terror thing. This
Hmm.
this is important because it still is a very, very critical pretext for Africom, particularly in distinct theaters, right? And so I'm thinking of here in particular Somalia,
Mm.
and I'm also thinking about Somalia, Sudan,
Hmm.
interestingly, and also the Sahel. And this works in kind of different ways, right? It is largely pretextual. If you get into the weeds of you get into the weeds of things, but in Somalia there is um, in Somalia has been a target of United States aggressions for decades. So this was not new. However, it should be noted that with the advent of 9/11 and the quote unquote global war on terror and going after Al Qaeda, etc., um, there was some direct personnel relations between militants between Mujahideen in Somalia and the Al Qaeda network, and that's documented.
Hmm.
Um, and so this and this would go through some of the various formations, like the Islamic Courts Union, and then eventually to Shabab, which is the current
Right.
target. And the actual situation is much more nuanced and complex than that,
Right. Right.
having to do with domestic Somali realities.
Hmm.
Um, but this was there. This piece was there, and so in the spirit of George W. Bush's global war on terror, this was definitely like a pretext. And we have to remember there's economics in this, right?
Right.
George W. Bush is trying to sell a quote unquote global war on terror, a global war. If we
Hmm.
just take the on terror part off, excise that off, and just think about a global war, George W. Bush is trying to sell a global war that people are going to make trillions of dollars off. War profiteers are going to make trillions of dollars off, right? And so these are great selling points. Look, there's people that I can directly connect to Al Qaeda over there. Yeah, great.
Hmm.
Let's throw some money and weapons at that, right? So this is a big piece of it, right? In Sudan, again, Sudan, a very complicated relationship, which it's hard to actually effectively separate from the relationship between the U.S. and Egypt and hermetically seal those off from each other. But well, okay, yes, that was a place that Osama bin Laden lived and operated for a while, and so the U.S. both had its pre-existing strategic, largely like resource and geography based interests in Sudan, and then it had that little then it could throw terror aspect in there and have that pretext right there. In the Sahel, particularly you have in the Sahel, you had different asymmetric formations, but particularly coming off of Algeria's dirty war,
Hmm.
you had you had an you had some elements that were veterans of the Mujahideen who went to fight in Afghanistan,
Hmm.
and they were implicated there. And again, if you stop there and you end the story there, you're getting a completely skewed, distorted vision of the actual politics and dynamics, conflict dynamics going on there. But remember, we're talking about George W. Bush. We're
Right.
talking these are the people we're talking about. So he didn't need, nor do I particularly believe he could even comprehend, wrap his mind around the actual nuances. It was enough to say, "Look, I spotted a terrorist. Great. Guess what? We can throw some money at that and expand our global war on terror and quote unquote legitimize it, and therefore keep the gravy train going." So I sorry, I think
No,
maybe I went too far, but
oh, please don't. That I am the last person you need to apologize to for giving a long explanation on a complex situation that the people who have been using that situation to excuse the wholesale bombing of entire countries for decades, which translates to the deaths of millions of people, and it's a death count that I don't think anybody has actually accurately been able to account for, right? So when I say that Africom, through this pretext that you have just laid out and explained so incredibly well, all this time, when I say they are responsible for the deaths of millions of Africans, I am not exaggerating. We literally do not know how many people the US has killed on the continent, and that's just on the continent of Africa, right? Since Africom has been operational. So, Jeremy, the connection between that wholesale slaughter of Africans based on this ridiculous pretext, which yes, there were some elements of terror cells, present in some places, but to use this to gin up this global war, basically on a continent of people,
Right,
right?
and I think
But but
I
what?
think I think I think it's really critical, Jackie. Just real quick, I think it's really critical this point that this sort of caveat that you just put in there, because I think there's a lot of people listening, especially people in these parts of Africa, that
Mhm.
would take issue if they felt like we were saying that there was not terror, because there are people, their families that are
Sure,
very much impacted by this.
absolutely.
So that's not the point. No, there is absolutely
Mhm.
there are absolutely acts of terror by various groups. It's not monolithic. By various groups pursuing different political objectives.
Mhm.
And it's a very real. That doesn't change the fact that it's largely pretextual.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's where I want us to make the connection between Africom and, let's say, Southeast DC. Africom and the National Guard deployed on the streets of DC, the National Guard deployed in Chicago. Now the National Guard is deployed in, I guess they're not going to be deployed in San Francisco because the tech giant said, no, we don't want that here. But they're going to be deployed in somewhere else in California because, the tech giants don't care about those people in that other city. How do we get people who are listening, who are looking at the militarism unfolding on US streets, and they're listening saying, oh, that's terrible about what they did on the continent of Africa with Africom, but why should I care about what Africom is doing on a whole nother continent somewhere else on the other side of the world? But we got the National Guard in DC right now. How do we make people understand that they should care about Africom?
Well, I'm going to put a pin in the question of how we should make people care. Let's go to the analogies first, and
Right.
then I'll come back to that point.
That's what
So,
I'm getting to. What the
yeah, yeah,
connections are. Yeah.
yeah. So, in terms of the analogy between the troops being deployed on the streets here, um, or we should say, coercion against, internal colonialism versus external colonialism and neocolonialism. I mean, the fact that they share a term should tell you something. There is an identity here. Ultimately, what you're talking about is an extractive relationship, is a coerced extractive relationship. And what is being ultimately extracted? What is ultimately being extracted is is our a labor power,
Hmm.
right? Is our labor power from an economic analysis, but also just our submission,
Mm.
our submission to their political control, and that's really probably the clearest demarcation. For example, the deployment to San Francisco or Chicago or even DC. There is not a clear economic imperative to these particular deployments. There is not a distinct uh, um, there is not a distinct tactical goal for these deployments, and that's one of the reasons they're getting primary reasons they're getting so much pushback from active duty military members.
Mm.
Um, uh, what it is a show of force. It is a way of saying, I am in charge and there's nothing that you can do about it. And you look, if you take a removed look, you look at it's not accidental where is being targeted. DC? Well, that's like home turf for the White House, right? That's they want to prove that they can be top dog on a home turf. And hey, it's also a majority black city, and they always love to target black folk. So that's there. You got DC. You got LA. Very simple. Half of Trump's campaign was complaining about largely about Latino migrante folk coming across the border, his border wall, and all this other garbage. Right. Well, the largest concentration is there. What in Los Angeles, major city in California, and it's added bonus that Gavin Newsom is the governor, and he doesn't like Gavin Newsom. There you go. There you got L.A. right there in a nutshell. Chicago, guess what? That's Obama land. That's him taking out his vengeance and declaring, swinging his proverbial privates at Obama. Right? That's what this is what Chicago is about. It's about about dominating that Democratic stronghold. Portland, very simple to see that one. That's keeping alive his Antifa mythology, which is like red meat for his followers. So that's why Portland's being targeted. San Francisco again. Gavin Newsom used to be mayor of San Francisco. So it's not like there's some great tactical advantage that the MAGA people are going to get from this, right? And there's not, like I said, not clear economic incentives either. It is just naked exercise of power to cow people, to cow people into submission, naked political control. Now you take that over to to Africom, you can see an analogy here insofar as, unlike, say, France, for example, the United States does not always have clear economic imperatives or clear political imperatives for their interventions in Africa in particular. Quite often, it has a lot more to do with a more sort of abstract sense of geopolitical control, or maybe jousting with other great powers. China comes to mind. And this is something that makes it a little bit harder to tackle, because it's harder sometimes. It's much easier if you have a distinct thing. Look at this. They're deploying troops to oppress this one population for this one discrete reason. That's kind of easy to mobilize people around, because it's clear. When it's more abstracted, like it tends to be with Africom, or even with this, people get confused, and so it's harder to straight up for good reasons, and so it becomes tricky. But they're very much intimately connected. Now let me talk about one distinguishing point though, that's very critical. When we are talking about the recent deployments in DC, or the half/threatened deployment in San Francisco, we are talking about actual deployment of U.S. military troops. This is a critical distinction, because with the aversion that people have to this this kind of violation of posse comitatus, and this aversion that U.S. people have towards seeing troops on active duty against residents and citizens here in the United States, they have even more of an aversion to seeing troops in Africa. And this goes back to that Mogadishu factor, back to that Black Hawk Down mess. And so a lot of what you see with Africom is actually not large U.S. troop numbers. What you see is the U.S. comes in with Africom, and it does what they call international military education and training. And what they'll do is they'll come in and they will train African soldiers. And they will get them dependent on U.S. arms and armaments. They will get them dependent on material. They'll get them dependent on U.S. military doctrines, to the point where they don't actually have to deploy troops, U.S. troops themselves, they'll just be in control of in neo-colonial control. It's like the military equivalent of political neo-colonial control of an entire nation's military through this kind of backhanded way. It's like it's pulling strings. And so this is one of the primary ways that Africom has historically operated. And there's actually a term of art for it called leading from behind. And they have like another term. This kind of comes out of the Obama era, specifically around 2011. And there's another term of art, which is even probably more shocking for people, and that is African solutions for African problems. And that sounds like this great Pan-African slogan that we should be saying and
It's
shit like
not.
No, that is a U.S. military slogan.
Oh my God, that came from. Oh,
yeah.
Oh man, I see.
And that's what they're talking about. So that's a critical distinguishing point is where the soldiers actually are and aren't.
See, okay, this is why I love what I do. This is why I love being an anti-imperialist, because and I really do, because you learn just how deeply nefarious all of this is. And for people who are listening who have been thinking, I must be crazy because I am the only person who sees what is going on and is upset about it. Nobody else that I know, nobody else in my family, none of my friends, none of the people I go to church with, none of the people I work with, nobody is as upset about the military, the National Guard, working with the local police. Nobody is upset about the local police having military equipment. Nobody is upset about training from the genocidaires in the settler colonial white supremacist apartheid ethno state of Israel, being trained by local police, and then the same local police getting the cast off military equipment from theaters of war, like what they do in Africom, being sent to MPD, the night goggles and the sniper rifles and the all of that. That's how Africom shows up on our streets. So right now, when we're upset about the National Guard being on the streets of DC, and now they'll be here for forever, I guess, because they just extended, not they, Muriel Bowser. Let me be clear. Muriel Bowser just extended the National Guard being here. They now have the authority to do traffic stops, because we have been seeing them do it. They are allowed to be armed now, and the Metropolitan Police have been ordered to cooperate with them. This is the same situation we're seeing in other places. And when we see the militarism through Africom, and it's not just Africa, it's all of the other commands that the U.S. has all around the world. When we see the militarism on the continent through Africom, and we see the material connections between our oppression that we are experiencing on the streets of our cities right now, there's no way, unless you really just don't want to see how they're connected, unless you really just don't want to admit how what's going on our streets today. And it's not just today because Trump is doing this. The 1033 program has been a problem for decades. Do you understand? Remember the military tanks rumbling down the streets in Ferguson? That this is the connection between things like Africom that seem like so disconnected. It's a world away. It's happening to those people over there. We've got our own problems over here. Our problems over here are connected to the problems that this government and this system creates all over the world. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming and talking about Africom. I know that BAP has so many events going on all across the country this month to raise up this issue of Africom and to educate our people. I do have to tell folks really quickly, Juliet in Raleigh, North Carolina, you are my heroine, sweetheart. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So, Jeremy, you got the last word. What do you want to say to people about what they should be doing? What they should be paying attention to, and how can they get connected?
Okay, so first off, go to the Black Alliance for Peace website if you don't regularly do that already, www.blackallianceforpeace.com, and check out because there's a whole section just dedicated to the month of action against Africom with the kickoff webinar and actions that are going on around the country listed, and you can tap into all that, see what we got going on, articles, etc. So that I'll plug that. Now, I just want to say really quickly, just to bring everything up to today with this lead from behind things, right? Tomorrow there is going to be a presidential election in Cote d'Ivoire. Okay, and that is and the current president, the current 83-year-old president. Remember how youthful Africa is. The current 83-year-old president
Mhm.
is France's man on the ground in Africa, and he's the primary author of a lot of the counter-revolutionary attacks on the Alliance of Sahel states and all this other stuff that's going on. Right? He's up for yet another term. As president, people have been protesting, but we're going to see that happening. At the same time, the very following day is going to be the final determination of the recent Cameroonian election, which is the longest serving dictator. That's a real dictator in Africa,
Right,
Paul Biya,
right.
right? 92 years old. And so that election is supposed to be codified the following day by their electoral commission or whatever. Now, I point these out because here's the thing. These movements, if the status quo is maintained or if there's a disruption, right, have massive political and human repercussions for the people on the ground in these countries, for the whole Sahel region. And you know very well that Africom is in there working these things and supporting France. This is really one of the primary contexts for lead from behind, supporting France in the machinations against the people to do this. So this is happening not just in 2008 or 2011. This is happening right now, this weekend, right? And this is why we have to stay on the ball. This is why the Black Alliance for Peace stays on the ball, because this is not a historic thing. This is a contemporary threat to African people. And unfortunately, the government that claims to govern us in this part of the on this part of the rock has a fairly outsized and dangerous and destructive role in these happenings. So we have an obligation, we have a duty to
Absolutely.
maintain resistance to it. I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. Hey, we are out of time. I want to thank you all so much. 390 left to go, but you can still call 588-9739, 1-800-222-9739. Stay tuned for News Views with Garland Nixon. Those of you on YouTube, stick around. Thank you so much. Peace until next time. Woo, thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate you, comrade.
Likewise, Jackie. Right on. Right on.
That hour goes fast as fuck.
It does. It does. I don't. Can you believe we didn't even touch on Libya?
I know. I wanted to ask about colonialism. Because there's this big old debate, and we're still on Black Liberation Media, by the way. So say hey to everybody, y'all. This is
Hey, y'all.
Yeah. So we're what was I saying? I can't remember what I was saying just a minute ago. But anyway, I wanted to ask about colonialism, because Jeremy, people, this week, the conversations we have been having this week after this no king stuff, it has just been so incredibly frustrating. And so I've had a couple of conversations with people who are like, why are we talking about settler colonialism? We don't live in a colony. So what do you say? Because I am just kind of convinced, Jeremy, that people just don't like the sound of my voice. I don't know what it is. When I say things, people are like, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear what she got to say no more. Every time she talk, I can't. Okay, cool. I don't have to say it. All right. Please explain colonization for domestic colonization and how it's connected to colonization that we think isn't happening here.
Well, look, colonization at a raw form right, is just uh, one people uh, entering a territory or a space and exerting coercive control with some level of residency, right? They some level of durability. It's not a flash in the pan. It's people that are going to stay here, try and entrench a position vis-a-vis the those who already live somewhere, and run game and coercively control, whether it be cultural affairs or economic affairs, uh, um, uh, and this is effectively what that's what it is to create a colony, to have colonialism. Now, if you, especially if you're black in this country, but if you put this, if and you want to say, oh, well, we have control, when did that happen? Did I
Over
miss
what?
something? Yeah, over what? Exactly. No, seriously, and I don't say this to run like a super hard victim narrative or something like this. But just in very pragmatic terms, what control? Do you have territorial control? Do you have economic control? Do you have control over something as simple as determining uh, where your children are going to go to school? Do in relative terms, yeah, I know there's such a thing as private school, but do you have control over the means of production? Do you have control over labor conditions? What control, do you have control over community safekeeping? Do you get to set the rules about what is and is not considered safe in ways that actually protect your family, or is your family the those who are pathologized by their external security controls? And if you can't come up, well, and I know you can't. I mean, it's not like this abstract hypothetical. If you can't answer affirmatively to these, well, actually, yeah, I do run that. Yeah, I do run that. Then guess what? What freedom? You don't have that freedom. You're not in control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we again, the watchword has always been self-determination. That's
Mm-hmm.
what they're afraid of, and that's what we need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I think Jeremy, that most of us who live in this system and have had to navigate this mess and have had to do weird things that we know instinctively are really fucked up, but we don't consider them in the larger context of politics, because we are indoctrinated to think of politics in a certain way, as something that is outside of us,
Right,
outside of ourselves. We in this country think of politics as something other people do, right? That
right.
somehow I don't I guess the indoctrination was really just that good, that we do not understand that are politics is concerned with us, whether we're concerned with politics or not. Like, because there is nothing that we experience and nothing that we come in contact with, nothing that we need, nothing that we have, nothing that we want, that is not impacted by politics.
Well, I mean, I'll lay it right. I'll lay it right on the line. Uh, I have a so-called smartphone. More to the point, I have a laptop which I am using to communicate with you right now. In my laptop are components, and those components employ minerals that are largely mined in places such as the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Mhm.
And the labor conditions in such places are nothing short of slavery
Mhm.
in many instances, not in all instances, but in many instances.
Mhm.
Therefore, ipso facto, my life conditions, whether I like it or not, are directly dependent on fellow Africans being enslaved.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that makes it. that makes it, unless, again, there are people that if you want to go hardcore individualist here and say, well, fine, I'm not fucking with no computer, I'm not, excuse my French, excuse me.
Oh no, this is the part where we can cuss. This is good. That's all right.
I'm not messing with no computer, I'm not messing with no cell phone, I'm gonna live off grid and not touch no technology. Okay, do you? That's great. Doesn't change the general political uh, 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 proposition, which is that our lives, whether we like it or not, are intimately connected to each other's, and to and again, we have a duty. If my I'm in school right now, you can't even, I don't know if people are aware of this. I'm an old ass man to go to graduate school, but whatever. If these days you can't even go to school without a laptop, it don't work.
True. That's
Like,
true.
you will not make it through the semester. You will not make it through the system without one of these computers. So literally, at very basic levels of our lives, um, we're connected to this. So we have a duty then. If unless we want to say we're okay, slavery's all right with me. Unless we want to go that route, right? We have a duty to fight. We have a duty to challenge this, and these systems are maintained. So that's the connection. I mean, you started off with the premise of like domestic colonialism or internal colonialism versus external colonialism. That's, I mean, if I don't know if you can get a clearer connection. There's more, but I don't know if you can get a clearer connection than that. And this is where these systems come. I get it. I get people are looking at this soldiers in the street, or they're thinking about like domestic immigration issues. Very, very, very narrowly too, not addressing all the African immigrants that are getting caught up in the
Canal
in
Street. I mean, have y'all been to that Canal Street in New York City? Have y'all been to that? Other than the fact that it's fucking fabulous, I had to stop going because I was just like. Then people will see me coming back on the train like, oh, you stayed too long. Just pretend like you don't see these 6 bags of clothes that I do not need. But we and when I'm saying now I'm talking about Africans. I think that for us, and I think it's very multi-layered. I think it's very multifaceted, because I think that oppressed people, I think we are dealing with centuries of multiple layers of multi-generational trauma. Like, on top of the indoctrination that is targeted. I mean, the shit is laser focused, to demographics, certain demographics of people. We are susceptible to that. We're susceptible to, the Americanization of our identity, right? And I think that's something I was just starting to think about a little bit this week. How we've had a problem in the past few years with the ADOS and the FBA and the Black nativists, not nationalists, nativists, completely different. And that's a whole nother conversation, because people have a problem with words, Jeremy, and people will be using the wrong word for the wrong shit. And then, like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. No, you literally don't know what words mean. This is why you're using the wrong ones. But we've had this issue with this whole Black nativist, this conservative Black nativist movement in the past few years. And while it's been a pain in the ass to see how they have the impact that they've had on collective Black consciousness, as it, whatever it is, after the crushing of the Black power, Black liberation movements of the 60s and the 70s, and the state terrorizing people away from radical organizing, because that's why they did it. Right? That's why they locked our people up and put people like Albert Woodfox in solitary confinement for 40 fucking years. Not because they actually did anything that warranted that kind of a sentence. It was a fear tactic. That our people were used, that our revolutionary ancestors were used as examples for the rest of us, for If you choose to follow in their footsteps, this is going to happen to you. And that scared a lot of people off. So there's that. There's the trauma of what the state did to our people. When we learn that, that really messes you up. Then when you actually learn the history of this country and learn what was done to our ancestors, and then if you're curious like me and you start to learn what was also done to the indigenous at the same damn time, it's a lot. And then you're learning all the rest of the stuff. You're learning about slavery and the genocide of the indigenous. Then you're learning about the Civil War. Then you're learning about Jim Crow after the Civil War. And then you're learning about segregation after the end of Jim Crow, And then you're learning about the civil rights movement and the militarization, the way the military was used against us then, and all of these things. And then you realize the more you learn, the more you look around and realize, wait a minute, shit ain't changed. Wait a minute.
I say this. I say this. Like, as regards the nativism, if you can identify, you can claim an identity as narrow as you want to, as you want to claim it, but you still have, there's certain questions you got to answer. You still got to step to, regardless of how narrow you want to identify. So if you want to say what, like third generation black from this block, Oakland, something like this. Okay, fine. All right, fine. Sure. Do you still not understand that you are also African? Do you still not understand that you have a connection to other people that live in a slightly larger geographical area, that you have that there are other it's really amazing. It's really amazing. And we see this, the truth is we see this all over the world, including on the continent of Africa. They just use a different term. Instead of calling it nativism, it's typically referred to as tribalism. Same shit. Okay. And I respect, sure. They're going to be different. Maybe are they going to be in different idiosyncratic instances? Are going to be different, foods or different cultural rituals, all the stuff, right? Different languages, sure, of course, right? Fine. Okay. The distinction does not imply that there is a necessary separation. And that is the critical piece. And every time we think about actual liberation, every time we think about actual semi-successful liberation pushes, they've almost universally been international. Okay? You got Panthers checking out Mau Mau's in Kenya. You got the Congolese folk looking at them. You got the Cuban folks sending solidarity, and the Panamanian folk checking what they're doing out, not to be confused with the Afro-Colombian folk that are riffing off that, not to be, and this is how, and the media takes great pains to suppress this. It's not, and also it's not about colorism either. You've got people, you look at like connections between Nasser in Egypt and Nkrumah in Ghana, right? Okay. It's what made, at every point, even in the black struggle, for people that want to narrowly define blackness, right, in a U.S. context, which I personally find ridiculous, but if people don't want to go that route, right, like I don't think it's far-fetched to argue that most people, at least in recent generations, would sort of highlight, what, Malcolm X and Dr. King, right? These are the pick up these leaders, these particular leaders, King with SCLC, Malcolm with the Nation, and then later the OAAU, and people like focus focus on this. Well, guess what? They both were in communication with counterparts in Africa.
I
They were they were not confused on this point whatsoever, and they were not alone in this either. As much as people like to make them monolithic, like these connections have been fluid throughout. And there's I would challenge anyone to find like I would challenge anyone to find a single solitary example of like a really intact like tough liberation push in our history that did not have that connection, that you could go more than like 1 degree of separation before finding
hmm But
that.
people aren't going to do that, Jeremy, because people don't like to read. People don't write. I mean, one of the weird conversations I had this week and this was, oh man, this was. I'm still like sometimes I'm sitting here working and I still just kind of stop and think, did this person really say this to me? Like there is a a a strain of anti-intellectualism among people who call themselves organizers where they don't want to read. They don't want to read theory. They don't want to read anything. They don't like that we who are already steeped in this work, one of the things that we do for ourselves is constant political education constantly, because guess who told us we had to do that? And once we start learning a few things, we realize how much we don't know, how much we didn't know. And when you learn a little bit of something and it opens up this realization in you that, oh my God, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. What else don't I know?
Right, exactly,
What
exactly.
else don't I? And Jeremy, this is a a realization that I still have. Like, I don't know what people think about organizers and reading. Like when we tell people you do have to read, beloved. You don't know what's going on because you don't read, beloved. You don't read, and you don't want to listen to people who are telling you you can understand this better if you read this, and this. These aren't even big things. These are just small things, but you have to read them to understand. You have to read the theory to understand how the theory shows up in real life, right?
Right.
But we've got people who don't want to do that, but these are usually the same people who criticize internationalism and Pan-Africanism. And I
Well, so this is interesting because there is a piece of that. There's another thing where this is a more complicated conversation, but uh
I specialize
th-
in those.
right, uh there is a thing where historically uh there have been moments where the Pan African general position has been placed at like maybe an academic remove, where it's been
Mm.
too where it's allowed itself to be uh uh overly intellectualized, or more to the point, it's allowed itself to like socially, it's less about the intellectualization part, more like it's allowed itself to socially migrate to spaces that have maybe invisible elite barriers.
Oh, I
And
love that.
and this is something that I think about the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and the organization of the quote unquote lumpen, right? And I think that it's not an entirely unfounded critique. It doesn't mean that Pan-Africanism or African nationalism is not relevant. Of course, it's relevant for people at all levels. You could make the argument it's more relevant than ever at people at the ground level of class stratification.
Mm-hmm.
But there is some work to be done to making it accessible and to teaching that it does belong to more folk than some people uh you know may assume. And that's part of that's part of the work that we have to
Yeah.
do. But on the basic literacy thing, one thing that I would throw at people that people don't want to read is is that even the most illiterate person, at least in the United States of America and in similarly situated countries, has a general, if abstract, understanding of something called a constitution.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not sitting here trying to promote red, white, and blueism. That's not the point. Okay.
No, because I will come after you if you do.
Yeah, good. And I would hope so. I would invite it. But it's interesting to note that if you talk to a lot of people who are raised in these societies, and you just put a basic proposition to them, what would you prefer, monarchy or a constitution?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, most people, even if they have not spent a moment paying attention to civics or government, anything like that, and maybe they're fully illiterate. Most people, at least raised in these circumstances, will instinctively say, "Oh yeah, I want a constitution. I don't want some.
Yep.
I don't want something." But they don't even think about distinction. Well, what's the distinction? Primary distinction. And again, I'm not getting into the much thornier question about whether this is real or just fantasy land, right? But most people say, "Oh yeah, I want a constitution." Well, they won't think about what's the basic distinction between a monarchy and a constitutional republic. Well, the most basic distinction is under a monarchy, you just have an exercise of personalized direct power. There's nothing else that's necessary to condition it. The king says do this, you do that.
Do it. Yeah.
The king says you're dead, guess what? Oh shit, problems. Okay, right. The constitutional republic, and again, I'm not saying it works, and I'm certainly not trying to push the red, white, and blue line.
Right.
Yeah? But the theory of it is that there's words on a printed page that make rules so that other shit can't just happen because the king wags the finger. That is literally the most basic premise. So don't you think, under that circumstance, you just asserted that you'd rather have that, regardless of the details of what actually happens, than a despotic monarch? Don't you think it might be slightly, if the rule that controls your life, the political rule that controls your life, is based on written words, don't you think it might be helpful to be able to read them?
Yeah, I love that. I love that explanation, that example. And I really do love what you said about the way Pan-African, because we were talking about this here in DC, and I'm sure it's something that exists in other places too, where there was a strong presence of the Black Power movement. DC was certainly one of those places. Oakland is another one of those places. New York City, obviously another one of those places, right? I think probably the major cities, probably Chicago, Illinois was one of those places. All the places where we can think of where our revolutionary forefathers and mothers operated, right? That was the hotbed of Black Power, Pan-Africanist, internationalist, revolutionary organizing, right? And I think in each of those places, because I know it's absolutely true in DC, that what you were describing, like Pan-Africanism migrating over to this space where it's walled off by this air of elitism, this Pan-African elite. And that is, I've been calling it like cultural Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and in DC, and I've been saying that because I've been saying it in a particular context where, because I live in Washington DC. I didn't go to Howard University, didn't graduate from nobody's college, went to college for 2 years, bored as shit, decided, you know what, I'm gonna go live my life. I ain't wasting no more of my damn money. I'm gonna make my money the way, however I'm gonna make my money, whatever somebody's gonna pay me to do, and that's it. Because I'm not, I really was never into, I need a college degree. I'm like, my thing has always been, what am I going to do with the rest of my life that is going to be productive? That really
Okay.
was kind of like, I talked to my mom about it, and she's like, I don't care what you do, just find something that you love, that you're good at it, and try to be the best at it that you can be. I just want you to have the better, like every child of every oppressed parent. I
Right.
want you to have a better life than I did. Right.
Right.
That is really, my mom was never one of those, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. I'm not saying that if your parents were like that, or if you are a parent like that, those of you who are watching, that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's just my reality. I went to college, did 2 years, really bored. And then I'm reading the stuff that they're telling me I'm supposed to read. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is a damn lie. This is a damn lie. And you expect me to sit here and write an essay on this shit? Fuck you. And yes, I was this bad even then. Yes. So in DC, what I noticed is that there has always been a very strong, what looked like Pan-African community. And there is, right? Because DC is very culturally diverse. A lot of immigrant communities, from all over the place. And that's always been something I've loved about DC. Lots of African immigrants. Up until maybe 20, 30 years ago, most immigrant communities lived in collective community with each other. Probably the past 20, 30 years, that has changed because gentrification has moved all the working class and poor people. Most of those folks were immigrants, but also a lot of us out of the city. So now they're living in suburban communities that are mostly, Ethiopian immigrants here, Filipino immigrants there, immigrants from El Salvador here, you know what I mean? Whereas before, most of the immigrants lived in DuPont Circle.
Right. Right.
And so there has always been a strong international feel in DC. There has always been a strong African community. So there's always been an air of Pan-Africanism here in DC. You could always find a Pan-African event, right? But I also noticed that some of the older folks in the Pan-African movement were kind of bougie. Were kind of real. They're real, and not all. But if you've spent any time in DC, you know exactly what I mean. These are the people who they only go to an event if they are on the panel. If they are being paid, they will never do anything for free. Do you understand? They're not going to come to your organization's event, especially if you can't pay them, right? And they're the ones who will go to the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference and make a big deal about, I presented at the conference, and go to the party on Friday night or at the end of the conference or whatever it is. But they're not actually representing the interests of the people, because these are the people who are trafficking in the aesthetics of Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
it's interesting.
They're wearing the dashiki. They're wearing the African jewelry. They may have even changed their name to an African name, but all they're doing is chasing the bag. They're
And the
not.
crazier part is, I totally feel all that. And then the crazier part is that there is nothing lonelier than being an African diplomat trying to get play on Capitol Hill. So the irony being is they're doing all that, and half the time they ain't even making any hay out of it at all. Because the truth is, whether it be the Congressional Black Caucus or the rest of Congress, for the most part, African political voices are, as a rule, ignored. And I almost wonder, I know there's like, I know there's class dynamics and like class, I know that bougie is and a general thing. It doesn't need like a particular like predicate, but but um at the same time, I have to wonder, like, if at least a small part of that might not just be like a reactionary position, like a reaction to that um uh uh exclusion. Because the truth is, and this is something that's kind of really difficult at the same time as you talk about like Africom, for example, or
Hmm.
whatever, because it's subtle. But the truth is, at a extremely fundamental level, the US government does not give a shit about Africa. And that's like, it's kind of hard to square that with what we talk about with like resource extraction and, et cetera. But uh, it's one of those things where like, hmm, two things can be true at the same time, whether or
Yeah.
not they contradict,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, and I think for I feel for for some of the African diplomats, not for all of them, because some of them are fucking compradors, and some of them I'm like, I really want you to get in front of Uncle Sam so you can really understand what Uncle Sam thinks of you. That you're selling your people out thinking that you doing that is gonna elevate your stature in the eyes of Uncle Sam, but no, you are just a means to his end, right?
Yep.
And so there's an aspect of that where I do feel like yes, I know that the U.S. government. I mean, we saw from, and interestingly, we were talking about this weekend too, because Jeremy, the BAP is not that old, right? BAP was founded in 2017, and BAP DC in particular is younger than BAP itself, because BAP DC
Yep.
probably was created in 2019 or something or other like that.
Yeah, no,
The
no, totally.
very
Same right
first,
here. Yeah.
yeah, the very first demonstration we did in DC for BAP DC as BAP DC was I think it was 2020 or 2021, the African Summit, where all those
Right.
African leaders came to meet with Biden.
22. 22. I think it was
22,
2022.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're standing, it was five of us, Jeremy. It was five of us. We started with five people.
That's how, but you know what? That's beautiful because that's how it has to start. People.
Mhm.
That's look. That's how the Black Panther Party started. People don't understand. Everything starts somewhere. Like you look at the same thing with Snick. That was like five or six of them around the
Mhm.
kitchen table. Yeah,
Mhm.
this is people act like you just snap your fingers and you got 10,000 members or something like that. It's silly.
Oh
It's like
my
I mean, it'd be
God.
cool. It'd be cool. It'd be great. Like yeah, sure, why not?
And
It's not
but
just
then,
not.
but
Yeah,
even that, but organizers like us, even with something like that, we are careful about that kind of thing. It's like
right.
all organizers are like, we need more people. But at the same time, the same organizers are like, no, wait a minute. We can't accommodate 5,000 people coming into this organization at the same time because we don't have enough people to onboard those people into this organization. And
And this is
really, that is like the story of BAP, interestingly, but it's also I think it's the story of every organization. I think the difference is I'm just crazy enough to be honest about people, with people about the journey of this particular organization, because I know that people have these weird, mystical, almost fantastical ideas about
yeah.
how our ancestors did what they did. And they're thinking that they had 10, 15, 20,000 people. And no, and it
No,
wasn't done, none of it was done overnight. All of it took years to build, to plan, to educate people.
generations.
This is what, and you don't
Yeah,
come to this knowledge that we have this level of knowledge that we have just because you automatically join an organization. You get this knowledge the way you get every other knowledge, every other piece of information. You have to learn.
Well, also an organization. Let's just be really clear. I mean, because this gets into the weeds of like organization versus alliance or whatever. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just if we don't go there, we don't go all the way there.
Yeah, I
But
know.
right. But just stick with your word, organization. Right? People, let's think about what it actually means. Like, what is this? What is the actual significance of this? The truth, organization, like other things, like association, like corporation, to a certain extent, you're talking about a group of people finding a way to come together
Mm-hmm.
for a collective purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's like we can either and it is important to a certain extent. Like, does your organization have integrity? Is your organization doing dirt? Is it a peaceful organization? Is it a militant organization?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there's important aspects to pay attention
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to, but at the end of the day, instead of like people, feel like people trip too much on like, oh, should I go in this? And I've heard you call people out. I love you for this, for calling people out on this. People trip. Should I go and join this organization or go in that organization? And the real question is, what are you trying to do? What do you want to see happen at the other end of this? Because at the end of the day, as far as I can tell, if we just want to talk about the Black Alliance for Peace, the Black Alliance for Peace is a fairly diverse global alliance of different individuals and formations
Mm-hmm.
that have their mind, that have their eye, that have come together around general understandings of a need for liberation, a need for self-determination,
Mm-hmm.
and a need for a more people-centered way of interacting with each other and people-defined human rights, people-centered human rights, as we say. Right? This is what, at a fundamental level, BAP is. Do we have lots of projects? Sure. Do we have campaigns? Also, sure. Do we have members that have different opinions with each other? Yeah. Do we have members at different class levels, at different or different political parties, especially if we're thinking internationally? Yes, and
Yeah.
yes. But at the end of the day, we are people that are coming together trying to make a push.
Yep.
And that's all. And so people want to try. Should you join it? I don't know. Should you? You got somewhere better. You got somewhere better to be there. Do that.
Yeah.
That's fine. But if you're gonna go over there to somewhere better, whatever the hell that is, maybe it is. Not saying anything. Not throwing shade. Yeah, maybe it is. Okay, whatever. Where can we come together
Mm-hmm.
so that our liberation is entwined?
Right.
Where can we come together? And that's the thing. You brought up No Kings earlier, and that showed the power of mass. There is power in numbers. It's true. There's power in numbers. It's just tragic that there's absolutely no demands or
Right.
healthy
Right.
ideology or
What did
anything.
they do with I mean,
Right,
you
exactly.
get
But so
7 million people out in the streets, and they go home.
right, exactly.
And
No, and that's
nothing. You had
it's
7 million people at your beck and call. You could have stood on each of those stages and told those 7 million people one thing in 5 different cities, and
right,
that would have changed the shit.
right.
It would have made an impact.
Of course.
7 million.
And that's the thing, and that's the critical distinction. And so it's like for people want to talk about that. I say, okay, look, yes, numbers can be impressive, but they don't do nothing if there's nothing behind them. And that's also okay. And the truth is that it is way easier to do a cattle call and just get warm bodies to show up for a broad.
Flowers.
Yeah. Especially when you got billions of dollars behind it, especially when you have the deep pockets of the Democratic Party of the United States to fund it,
Mhm.
like, yeah, you have a little bit less of a burden, but it, You can put a pin in that. You can put a pin in numbers and say, okay, I see that numbers have power. That's one kind of power. And then you say, okay, but what is the actual, what if I actually had my eye on what I want this world to look like? What if I had my eye on an actual demand? What if I had my eye on what, like a tangible political victory for my family, for my community,
Right.
for my people, right?
Right.
Uh, it may take you longer to get to the numbers, but guess what? You're actually doing something.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to forget about the numbers. You can still
Mm-hmm.
remember, but build it so that when we come with the numbers, so that when we come with the numbers, we're coming with something that actually threatens the despotic status quo.
Right. Right. That's why there were no arrests, or few, very, very few arrests at these No Kings protests, because while they, and I see the comments, in the chat. Listen, it is our job, it is our responsibility as revolutionary, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist organizers who recognize that the issue is the system and not Trump. Yes, Trump is doing awful, awful things, things that a lot of people have not seen before. But we understand, because of our political understanding, that Trump is a product of a system. And the system is the actual problem. The foundations of this country that the system rests on, that the system was built on, that is the problem. So when we
Exactly.
are criticizing efforts that do not address the problem, we're not expressing competition with tactics and strategies, because we're looking at the outcome of the thing that was done, and we see no tactics or strategies. What what
Right. And
what was the tactic and the strategy, outside of getting as many people in the streets to say one thing as you could and then letting them go home? What was the strategy and the tactic behind that, and what did it accomplish? That is the criticism. It's not that people did a thing. Great, you did a thing, but what did you
right.
do with the thing?
And it's also not about elitism, right? I found myself constantly in this conversation over the No King stuff. It's like, I don't look, power. I take the phrase "all power to the people" very seriously, and and when I hear "power to the people," I mean the people, not my people, not the select crew that I roll with, not the select. I really have an aversion to the, like, more radical than thou, or all this,
Yeah.
all this stuff. So I don't, like, turn my nose down or poo poo to people that where they were at what was to go out to No Kings. No, I'm happy. Thank you for standing up, because at least you got off your ass and did something. So I'm not gonna throw shade on that. You moved.
Mhm.
That's great. The criticism is not to make you feel bad. The criticism is to
Right.
say we can do so, can and need to do so much more.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
all.
Exactly. And people, I think, kind of take the criticism personally, because, and I think this is also where being in an organization has helped me, because it's hard. Criticism, nobody likes it. Nobody likes criticism. Nobody likes to be criticized, right? But being in organization has helped me recognize the difference between constructive criticism and somebody just shitting on me because they got an issue. So when we
Right.
are saying of these protests, what comes next? What When we're asking what were the demands, I'm not shitting on that. I'm really asking. Like, you wanted 7 million, you wanted millions of people to come out in the streets. Why?
You,
Why?
you know,
I mean,
it,
outside of you hate Trump and Trump must go right now, what else did you want people to come? Because I'm asking, and I'm also asking because I want people to ask, okay, so what if you get what the one demand is? Trump must go now, right? All right, let's say tomorrow he's gone for whatever reason. However, tomorrow, Saturday, October 25th, let's say he's no longer here. Okay, now what?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and the other thing is there's people that like I remember the first iteration of No Kings June or something like that,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
and during that one, at the time, people probably largely, if you weren't directly impacted, have forgotten about this, but at the time, there was active military operations against Lebanon and Iran going on
Mm-hmm.
at that time. And I'm a papa. I took one of my kids out there to the streets,
Mm-hmm.
and there was signs about all these signs about Trump and all this stuff, and bunch of we don't want no king and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Cool. For the million, I mean, I guess it would have been millions exactly what was that, but for the tens of thousands that I was in direct proximity with, there wasn't I didn't see a single solitary sign, didn't hear a single solitary chant of anyone talking about an illegal war that was literally being prosecuted while we marched. And it was not concealed. It wasn't like some special operations strike hidden by night and classified or something. Everyone knew it was happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's that say? What's that say about where the about where we're at again? Okay, yeah, to hell with Trump. Like, yeah, fuck Trump. Get rid of Trump, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
but but what's that say if we can't get past that point? If we can't understand that they're like the world needs us to be able to think to go past
Oh,
that.
that right there. Oh my God, that right there, Jeremy, that just brought us right back to damn Africom. Cause seriously, do we think with Africom having been formally implemented and expanded under Obama, approved under Bush, but formally expanded under Obama, how do you think the people who have been suffering under Africom feel when all we focus on is Trump?
Well,
Like
it's like
we have not, that there have been, and this is, and then I know sometimes I probably get frustrated when I talk to people who are frustrated with me because they think for some reason that, because I've had people tell me this, like, oh, you think you know so much. No, I'm actually kind of terrified about how little I know, and I'm in the position I'm in. Like, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? This is not a great idea, but okay, we'll see where it goes, and I'll try my best, But that is also
you do a pretty good job.
no. I mean, look, I try to make people understand very clearly. None of us, at least in BAP, that I can, and I talk about BAP because BAP is what I know.
Right.
Right. I don't talk about BAP because I think BAP is the best thing out there, sister. No, good God, no. No, there's no such thing as the
Right.
best
Right. Exactly.
organization for it. No, we are not in competition with people.
And it's a
That's
silly.
not
It's a
what this
silly.
is.
It's a
No,
silly premise too. I mean, again. Did you get free? Did I blink and you got free?
right.
Did a different organization free you?
Listen, if some other organization out there actually achieves the liberation of, yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hell yeah. You think I give a damn? I mean, we can all, if that happens, we can all be our best selves. And well, actually, no, then we have to defend the revolution, which people are also not prepared to do. But that's another conversation. but I talk about BAP because BAP is what I know, and I talk about what I see that has been helpful for me, because I see the people in leadership in BAP as exactly like me. Like, we are just people who joined this thing that was supposed to be an alliance of organizations and ended up being an organization of individuals and organizations because of the influx of new members in 2020, and I think in 2023 3 or 4, right? So now we have this organization with a bunch of individual members that wasn't planned on at first, and so they had to adapt. They had to create structures. They had to create processes, and in doing that, you have to have people who are accountable for producing those things, popularizing those things, making sure those things are implemented, making sure that people coming into the organization are aligned with what the organization is doing and is understanding what's going on. And at the same time, we're learning all of this stuff as we're growing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're all being watched.
Yeah, but Jack, it's like this. When Che Guevara first joined Fidel Castro and the Sierra Maestros, he didn't think his face was going to be on a T-shirt worn by people all over the world. Okay, this was a disabled Argentinian doctor.
Yeah.
In the Cuban mountains with I think what wasn't Castro the son of a lawyer or something, like, you know what I mean? It was like, these were just people, right? These were just folks, and they got together on something, and I don't say that to minimize it, to say that they weren't extraordinary or very interesting or impactful people or whatever. And I wouldn't say that about that's something largely for history to decide for all of us, But at the end of the day, it don't start with the bright lights of the title or even power. It doesn't even start with power. This is all human business.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to, and that's, I think that's especially important for young people to pick up on, because especially with as much influence as Hollywood and all its,
oh my God,
21st century progeny, whatever, the whole, all the social media, the influencer shit and all this stuff, there's like this weird ethic that if you're not super noticed right away, that it's not important, that it's not real, that it didn't happen.
Right.
And yeah, that's not gonna work.
No, it is not going to work. It is not going to work. And look, I know there are people who believe that all organizations are celebrity cults, that all organizations are hierarchical, patriarchal, corners of oppression, because there's a lot of that. There's people coming into organizations who don't know anything about organization, who are very young, who've never encountered organization, who have an idea of what they think organizations should be based on some very recent, very flawed, and, as we can see, very ineffective models. I'm trying not to name names because I'm trying to grow the fuck up with my mouth, Jeremy. And it's really difficult because, oh my God. But listen, I try really hard just to convey to people that I am a regular chick from Southeast DC. I have not graduated nobody's college. I ain't got a degree from nowhere. I love to read. I am curious, and I love my people. I know that we are not free. I know there is better than this. And I believe that because I know this, and so few people around me have at least acknowledged, because I don't believe that people don't know. I believe that people just don't acknowledge that it's true, because it is just easier. It is just easier and less stressful to go with the flow and hope that they miss you, right? I think that is what most people are doing. I understand it. I'm trying to explain to people they're not going to miss you. They're coming down your street in a few whatevers. But I try to impress upon people that organizers, yes, I know people, it's almost like church. Like, I know that people are hurt by church. Yeah, people have been fucked over by church. People have been fucked over by pastors and evangelists and Christians. And yes, I think the same thing is true in regard to organizing. I think people have been fucked over by by some
Of course.
organizers and have had horrible experiences in some organizations. I just really want to impress upon people that generally, yeah, you're going to have problems with people because we're people. Like, human beings are the messiest creation on the planet. We will fuck everything up because
Yeah,
we are people, we are human beings, we are all undoing this indoctrination that we're in these organizations to confront. We're also maturing and growing as individual beings and trying to learn how not to move as an individual in a society that indoctrinated us to be that way. We're trying to learn to be human in a
exactly.
society that indoctrinates us to believe that the only thing that's important is us as the individual. We organizers are learning to be organizers while we're organizing, right?
Exactly. No, I couldn't think. I'm gonna have to hop, but I couldn't think of a better place to end on than that. That's really the beginning and the end of it. And like you said, we fuck up all the time. Like if I said something here today that rubs you wrong, guess what? It's not gonna be the last time. And it's not because I don't like you. It's because I'm human.
That's
And if we set a standard that's beyond being human, this really comes into play with like people that are too purist about shit. You know what I mean? It's like if we standard that's just like not attainable, it's just hopeless. It's but again, it's a very at root, it's a very basic proposition.
Mhm.
Two very basic propositions. One is shit ain't right. And then the second proposition is we're trying to work it out how to do better. We have not accepted defeat and we're trying to work it out how to do better. And if both of those resonate, hey, let's talk. Let's see if we can work it out together. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Right. And if we can't agree, that's cool too. Not gonna waste any time slamming you in public. Oh, Jimmy, you do your thing in your lane. Let us do our thing in our lane, and hopefully we will get to liberation together. Jeremy, thank you so much. Actually didn't mean to have you on the whole time. I was just having such a good time talking to you. I'm like, let me see how long he'll stay. So
No, me too, Jack. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate to all the folks listening. I appreciate you, joining in this conversation with us.
thank you so much, comrade. We'll talk soon. And you all be good. Have a good weekend. Our luta continua, the struggle continues. But if we keep doing this shit, y'all, Victoria Acerta, victory is certain. Stay tuned for Black Myths, I think. All right, y'all. Peace.
All right, peace.